Okay, let's see here. Awesome. That looks great. Let's make sure everything is... Yes. Okay. So, welcome to the stream, everyone. We are live. Just wanted to make sure it was actually going out. First time using YouTube Live scheduled live feature. So, we are nearing about 20 minutes before this starts to air. This is Tucker Carlson. He actually flew from the United States over to Moscow, Russia, and secured a very rare interview with Vladimir Putin. And we actually will have a special guest here in the stream momentarily. He's actually a Russian. He's going to be able to give us some inside news about what's happening with Russia and what his take is on what Putin says, and he currently lives here in the U.S., so also what Tucker says. So it's going to be super interesting to hear what Pavel has to say. Now, again, guys, we're about 20 minutes away, so feel free to put into the chat here any questions you may have. Because when Pavel gets on, we'll be able to ask him those sorts of questions. We are simulcasting this on TikTok and YouTube. Sharon, I see Sharon's in here. Joan, hello. Cherry's in here as well. Watching on YouTube using TV and TikTok on my phone. There you go. You were just about to look for this live. Well, there you go, Shannon. Yes, we are live here. We are live. And we're just going to hop into this one talk group over here. So that way we can get him in here. Preacher's in the house. Preacher, we missed you last night or early this morning. We had a rocket launch from Kennedy Space Center. Veronica, hello, Veronica. Glad to see you back in here. Okay. So I'll show you guys.
We're in Moscow
this.
tonight. We're here to interview the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin. We'll be doing that soon. There are risks to conducting an interview like this, obviously. So we thought about it carefully over many months. Here's why we're doing it. First, because it's our job. We're in journalism. Our duty is to inform people. 2 years into a war that's reshaping the entire world, most Americans are not informed.
So they
have no real idea what's happening in this region, here in Russia or 600 miles away in Ukraine. But they should know. They're paying for much of it in ways they might not fully yet perceive.
Okay, he'll be on in 5 minutes, guys. Pavel, our special guest, will be on in 5 minutes.
Thousands of people dead, an entire generation of young Ukrainians. And it's depopulated the largest country in Europe.
Hello, Sharon.
But the long-term effects are even more profound. This war has utterly reshaped the global military and trade alliances, and the sanctions that followed have as well. And in total, they have upended the world economy. The post-World War II economic order, the system that guaranteed prosperity in the West for more than 80 years,
it's amazing he was able to get over to Moscow to get this interview.
Along with it, the dominance of the U.S. dollar.
Hello, guys.
These are not small changes. They are history-altering developments.
No, this is the video he published about the interview when he confirmed the interview.
Ask anyone in Asia or the Middle East.
About 18 minutes will be showing the new unedited video.
Countries seem mostly unaware. They think that as nothing has really changed.
We do have a special guest coming in a few moments as well.
The truth. Their media outlets are corrupt. They lie to their readers and viewers. And they do that mostly by omission. For example, since the day the war in Ukraine began, American media outlets have spoken to scores of people from Ukraine, and they have done scores of interviews with Ukrainian President Zelensky. We ourselves have put in a request for an interview with Zelensky, and we hope he accepts.
Yeah, it's going to be
interesting. The interviews he's already done in the United States are not traditional interviews. They are fawning pep sessions specifically designed to
Yes, Anna, yes. It will be 17 minutes. It comes up at 6 p.m.
And pay for it.
We have a special guest from Russia who will actually be on in a few moments as well.
The kind that kills people.
So we have a very special guest who will be on very soon, and he'll be able to answer some of your questions as well. He's post-Soviet Union Russia.
The president of the other country involved in this conflict, Vladimir Putin. Most Americans have no idea why Putin invaded Ukraine or what his goals are now. They've never heard his voice. That's wrong.
That is true.
Americans have a right to know all
He is very true. We haven't heard Putin's voice. We go off of what the mainstream media tells us from government officials.
Is our birthright. We were born with the right to say what we believe.
About 16 minutes.
That right cannot be taken away no matter who is in the White House. But they're trying anyway.
We're going to see if I get banned for sharing this. We're going to see if I get banned and censored.
And then leak the contents to their servants in the news media. They did this in order to stop a Putin interview that we were planning.
Yeah, he
did.
Last
month, we're pretty certain they did exactly the same thing once again. But this time, we came to Moscow anyway.
They tried blocking Tucker.
We are not here because we love Vladimir Putin. We are here because we love the United States. And we want it to remain prosperous and free. We paid for this trip ourselves. We took no money from any government or group. Nor are we charging people to see the interview. It is not behind a paywall.
Speaking of, the special guest has arrived.
Unedited on our website, tuckercarlson.com. Elon Musk, to his great credit, has promised not to suppress or block this interview once we post it on his platform, X, and we're grateful for that.
So,
Western governments, by contrast, will certainly do their best to censor this
yeah, Edwin,
on other less principled platforms because that's what they do. They are afraid of
Pavel,
information
it should be... It should, so it's either going to be on tuckercarlson.com or it's going to be simulcasted on X at the same time. It's going to be one of the other. We're going to monitor both. I'll shoot you over some links here.
And then, like a free citizen and not a slave, you can decide for yourself. Thanks.
So that's what we need to know is whether it's going to be straight on X or if it's going to be simulcasted over to X from tuckercarlson.com. I'm not sure. We're about to find out, guys.
I see a link directly on the site here on tuckercarlson.com.
Oh, I do. Oh, so he has its own CDN, it looks like.
Yeah.
So, okay, so it's going to be right on here. Watch the interview. This has to be it. Whenever it goes up, it's got to be on here. And this is going to be interesting. So he did the interview. He did an interview with Mark Epstein, Dana White, Douglas McKay, Bill O'Reilly, Donald Trump, Tristan Tate, Ice Cube, Andrew Tate.
I would love to sit in for that one.
Hey, I love Ice Cube. I have to admit, I do love Ice Cube. Thank you for subscribing there, guys. Catherine's in the chat. Preacher's over here as well. Anna, Apollo, Cherry, Edwin. All you guys are super awesome. Guys, we are less than 15 minutes away. So, Pavel, if you want, I kind of gave a very brief overview to the couple hundred of viewers we have between TikTok and YouTube. You want to give a bit of a background about you and Russia?
Sure. So, my business name is Orsai, but I actually am, my real name is Pavel Kukik. Originally from Russia. I grew up during post-Soviet times, was born there in 1994. Moved to the U.S. With some family, some post family in 2001. It was actually, I think it was about 3 to 4 months before 9/11 that I came here, started elementary school. This was around basically when I was 7 years old, and have been living in the U.S. as a naturalized citizen ever since. So I still have very strong ties to Russia. I've been back several times, and I've been, needless to say, I'm closely monitoring what's happening here because, you know, this is impacting all of us. At one point, there was even some talk about, you know, the government revoking naturalization documents and all of that. So, yeah, that's basically where I stand I'm standing right now.
Yeah, because did you go to Moscow or did you go to St. Petersburg? I remember a couple years ago when you had went over.
Mainly to Moscow, but my home country is actually, or my home city is actually Yekaterinburg, which is about 4 hours to the east of Moscow.
So, tell us about this, Pavel. So, from years ago, could you fly directly to Moscow? What would it be like different now trying to get to Moscow like Tucker had to do?
So typically the route that I would take, so I live in the South U.S. So it was from the South U.S. over to New York. So New York was basically the international travel hub. And then I would board an airline called Aeroflot from New York, and then I would go to Moscow. And then from Moscow, I would go wherever in the country I needed to go. That was the most direct and actually the cheapest route. And that route no longer exists. One of the reasons is because there's now a permanent NOTAM in place where no Aeroflot airplanes can fly over or into NATO airspace or into U.S. airspace. So that basically took away the cheapest and fastest travel route into the country. So if I was to try and go back today, I definitely don't want to fly over Ukraine or one of those other dangerous territories. Needless to say, I want to get there in one piece. I would probably have to go through Dubai or maybe Turkey or one of those other neutral countries. But I can tell you the ticket price that I would have to pay would probably be double. Anything to do with Dubai is expensive. So even if I was to fly through Dubai, it wouldn't be on Aeroflot. It would probably be on like Ural Air or something like that.
So you basically have to play Frogger to get over there, and in that meantime, you're spending a lot of money to be able to go there, and hopefully, you don't get stopped by someone saying, well, where's your return ticket, and all of this.
Yeah, and that was a problem even before the war. But when I went there in 2016, it was already a problem because I was actually stopped by immigration officials in New York. So I had all documentation. I had TSA issued ID. I had a TWIC card. I had, I'm a naturalized U.S. citizen, and I still have 2 Russian passports as well. So, yeah, and they stopped me, did their thing, searched my bags, didn't find anything, and then eventually I just basically convinced them to let me on my way.
Wow.
Almost missed my flight, but almost missed
the flight. Yeah, they take you into secondary, and then you're stuck in this little room for 4 hours. In the meantime, everyone's like, "Bye, we're in the air."
Yeah, that was not a pleasant experience. Come on, New York, we need to do better.
So, guys, the interview here is about 9 minutes away. It goes live at 6 p.m. You guys are going to be watching it live here. It's unedited. We do have confirmation that he was in Moscow with Putin for 2 hours. So it sounds like it could be a 2-hour long video. So just be prepared for that. It's going to be interesting here as to what is said. This is really why Putin had invaded Ukraine and why, what his end goal is. That's the purpose of this interview, was to try to find out direct from the source what Russia wants and why they are doing what they're doing. What's your take on the whole Russia and Ukraine side?
Pull up the stream. So what's my take on, say that again?
So what is your take on Russia invading Ukraine? Why do you think it was done?
So there are several different point of views to this. I'll give you all of them, right? I'm trying to look at this through an unbiased eye, even though I am a Russian citizen, right? So I'll tell you what everyone is saying. And that is, Putin has one goal in mind, and that is basically the reunification of the Soviet Union. So he wants to reunify the Soviet Union, essentially. And in fact, there was a previous interview with Putin several years ago, maybe 10 years ago, It was on a Russian channel, but I distinctly remember watching this on the Russian news, where a student asked him, "What was the most significant event in your life?" And Putin's response was the fall of the Soviet Union.
Because he was KGB.
Yes, he is ex-KGB. He was a special operations, basically someone from special operations. Eventually, he rose up to the big seat of the KGB, ran the KGB for a while, and then he basically took over Boris Yeltsin, who had to retire because of, well, let's just say because of issues that he caused himself. Boris Yeltsin was a heavy drinker, and that led to health complications, and basically the ailing Boris Yeltsin.
It's up.
The following is an interview with the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, shot February 6, 2022.
2 hours long, guys. 2 hours, 7 minutes.
Which is, of course, the Kremlin. The interview, as you will see if you watch it, is primarily about the war in progress, the war in Ukraine, how it started, what's happening.
That's beautiful. In front of Tucker, in front of the Kremlin. Beautiful.
One note before you watch. At the beginning of the interview, we asked the most honest question, which is, why did you do this? Did you feel a threat, an imminent physical threat, and that's your justification? And the answer we got shocked us. Putin went on for a very long time, probably half an hour, about the history of Russia going back to the 8th century. And honestly, we thought this was a filibustering technique and found it annoying and interrupted him several times. And he responded he was annoyed by the interruption. But we concluded in the end, for what it's worth, that it was not a filibustering technique. There was no time limit on the interview. We ended it after more than 2 hours. Instead, what you're about to see seemed to us sincere, whether you agree with it or not. Vladimir Putin believes that Russia has a historic claim to parts of Western Ukraine. So our opinion would be to view it in that light, as a sincere expression of what he thinks. And with that, here it is. Mr. President, thank you. On February 22nd, 2022, you addressed your country in a nationwide address when the conflict in Ukraine started. And you said that you were acting because you had come to the conclusion that the United States, through NATO, might initiate a, quote, surprise attack on our country. And to American ears, that sounds paranoid. Tell us why you believe the United States might strike Russia out of the blue. How did you conclude that?
It's not that America, the United States, was going to launch a surprise strike on Russia. I didn't say that. Are we having a talk show or a serious conversation?
Here's the quote. Thank you. It's a formidable serious.
Because your basic education is in history, as far as I understand.
Yes.
So if you don't mind, I will take seconds to give you a short reference to history for giving you a little historical background.
Please.
Let's look where our relationship with Ukraine started from. Where did Ukraine come from? The Russian state started gathering itself as a centralized statehood, and it is considered to be the year of the establishment of the Russian state in 862, when the townspeople of Novgorod invited a Varangian prince, Rurik, from Scandinavia to reign.
Yes, they are at the Kremlin.
In 1862, Russia celebrated the 1000th anniversary of its statehood. And in Novgorod, there is a memorial dedicated to the 1000th anniversary of the country. In 882, Rurik's successor, Prince Oleg, who was actually playing the role of regent at Rurik's young son, because Rurik had died by that time, came to Kiev. He ousted two brothers who apparently had once been members of Rurik's squad. So Russia began to develop with two centers of power, Kiev and Novgorod. The next very significant date in the history of Russia was 988. This was the baptism of Russia, when Prince Vladimir, the great-grandson of Rurik, baptized Russia and adopted Orthodoxy, or Eastern Christianity. From this time, the centralized Russian state began to strengthen. Why? Because of the single territory, integrated economic ties, one and the same language, and, after the baptism of Russia, the same faith and rule of the prince. The centralized Russian state began to take shape. Back in the Middle Ages, Prince Yaroslav the Wise introduced the order of succession to a throne. But after he passed away, it became complicated for various reasons. The throne was passed not directly from father to eldest son, but from the prince who had passed away to his brother, then to his sons in different lines. All this led to the fragmentation and the end of Rus as a single state. There was nothing special about it. The same was happening then in Europe. But the fragmented Russian state became an easy prey to the empire created earlier by Genghis Khan. His successors, namely Batu Khan, came to Rus, plundered and ruined nearly all the cities. The southern part, including Kiev, by the way, and some other cities, simply lost independence, while northern cities preserved some of their sovereignty. They had to pay tribute to the horde, but they managed to preserve some part of their sovereignty. And then a unified Russian state began to take shape with its center in Moscow. The southern part of Russian lands, including Kiev, began to gradually gravitate towards another magnet, the center that was emerging in Europe. This was the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. It was even called the Lithuanian-Russian Duchy, because Russians were a significant part of this population. They spoke the old Russian language and were Orthodox. But the union of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania and the Kingdom of Poland. A few years later, another union was signed, but this time already in the religious sphere. Some of the Orthodox priests became subordinate to the Pope. Thus, these lands became part of the Polish-Lithuanian state.
He knows his history.
Yes, he does.
During decades, the Poles were engaged in colonization of this part of the population. They introduced their language there, tried to entrench the idea that this population was not exactly Russian, that because they lived on the fringe, they were Ukrainians.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Originally, the word Ukrainian meant that the person was living on the outskirts of the state, along the fringes, or was engaged in a border patrol service. It didn't mean any particular ethnic group. So the Poles were trying to, in every possible way, to colonize this part of Russian lands, and actually treated it rather harshly, not to say cruelly. All that led to the fact that this part of the Russian lands began to struggle for their rights. They wrote letters to Warsaw demanding that their rights be observed and people be commissioned here, including to Kiev.
I beg your pardon, can you tell us what period? I'm losing track of where in history we are. The Polish oppression of Ukraine.
It was in the 13th century. Now I will tell you what happened later, and give the dates so that there is no confusion. And in 1654, even a bit earlier,
when you all are watching this interview, I want you to pay attention to the posture that Putin presents. Everything that he does is calculated. The way that he's sitting is calculated. All of the body motions and all of that. Just keep an eye on that.
Origin and Orthodox faith. When Warsaw did not answer them, and in fact rejected their demands, they turned to Moscow so that Moscow took them away. So that you don't think that I'm inventing things. I'll give you these documents.
Well, it doesn't sound like you're inventing it. I'm not sure why it's relevant to what happened 2 years ago.
But still, these are documents from the archives, copies. Here are the letters from Bogdan Khmelnytsky, the man who then controlled the power in this part of the Russian lands that is now called Ukraine. He wrote to Warsaw demanding that their rights be upheld. And after being refused, he began to write letters to Moscow, asking to take them under the strong hand of the Moscow Tsar. There are copies of these documents. I will leave them for your good memory. There is a translation into Russian. You can translate it into English later. Russia would not agree to admit them straight away, assuming that the war with Poland would start. Nevertheless, in 1654, the Pan-Russian Assembly of top clergy and landowners, headed by the Tsar, which was the representative body of the power of the old Russian state, decided to include a part of the old Russian lands into Moscow Kingdom. As expected, the war with Poland began. It lasted 13 years, and then in 1654...
Oh yeah, absolutely. He does his research, he meets with advisors that are dedicated to various Russian subjects,
and
even the Russian
years
language,
later,
right?
I think,
guys, we have to talk, otherwise this will get copywritten. We're supposed to do commentary on this interview, otherwise it's a straight copyright violation of Tucker Carlson. So we have to do a commentary, or else this will get deleted and I'll get banned.
Under the rule of Catherine the Great,
so we can, just let me know if you want me to kind of somewhere, but yeah, I'm watching the chat too, so if somebody has a question, just let me know.
Right, that's all, guys. I don't want to get banned. We have to abide by copyright.
You can probably turn the video audio down just a little bit. I think somebody said it was a little low.
And the Ukrainianization.
There we go.
That's good.
Their motive was obvious. Just before World War I,
so I'll say a couple things here. So Putin is basically going into the Russian history, how the Russian state was established. Again, this is all stuff that I had to learn in early years of schooling. This is all something that Russian children have to learn. I am not an expert on Russian history. I know a lot more U.S. history than Russia, but it's very rich history. It has to do with religion, it has to do with the Orthodox religion of Russia. And eventually he's going to unify this with the point that happened 2 years ago. But this is basically just
sought to restore the statehood, and the civil war began.
Kind of like what led up to it in the history of Russia. Oh, people can leave if they want. Here's the thing. They can leave. They're not going to be able to see this anywhere else because the website is completely overloaded right now. We've already cached this entire thing with our fiber, so, you know, they'll be back.
After Poland cooperated with Hitler. It did collaborate with Hitler, you know?
Yeah, and really, this is just free media, right? I don't know if this is being simulcasted to any kind of news networks.
In return, that
it is free trade as far as I'm concerned.
So-called Danzig corridor, which connected.
And again, guys, we have to talk, or else this will get copyrighted. And if you don't like that, then you can wait till tomorrow to watch this interview.
Yeah, and you can watch it. I'm sure that later on there will be another version
this
that will
territory
be out
was
somewhere.
transferred to Poland, and instead of Danzig, a city of Dansk emerged.
Yeah, and Tucker doesn't do closed captioning for those asking. I just checked. We don't have closed captioning available.
Of course.
Still, they collaborated with Hitler and engaged together
So I've been on the location
in the
in the
partitioning
actual
of
Kremlin.
Czechoslovakia.
I have been to the outskirts of the Kremlin. Inside is beautiful. It's not like an office. It's not like an office environment. It's not even like the White House where things are decorated in the historic past of the U.S. Everything is ornate. Everything is like wooden and mahogany, and
This briefing is coming to an end.
very
It might
well
be
lit
boring,
up. So
but
you can
explains
see
many
the
things.
attention to detail and all of the architecture
Good.
where they're meeting at right now.
I'm so
Yeah, and you
gratified
guys
that
are not
appreciate
comprehending
that. Thank you.
copyright. We
So,
can't be in the
before
background.
World
Our
War
audio
II,
has to be
Poland collaborated
predominant,
with
or else
Hitler,
we'll get a content
and
ID
although
strike.
it did not
It's what
yield
you're
to
not
Hitler's
comprehending.
demands, it still participated in the partitioning
We
of
can't turn
our
Czechoslovakia
voices down.
together with Hitler, as
Right.
the
It's
Poles
a very
had not
slippery
given the
slope because
Danzig
what
corridor
happens
to
is
Germany.
what happens is the YouTube algorithm actually goes in and searches for all these filters. There's all kinds of filtering.
Why was it Poland against whom the war
Filtering content
started
checks that
on
it does.
1st September
Unfortunately, this is how
1939?
it has to be.
Poland turned out to
Because
be
nobody wants to
uncompromising,
serve.
and Hitler had nothing
Yeah,
to do but
and guys,
start
the
implementing
website's
his
not
plans with
working for a
Poland.
lot of people because it's being overloaded.
Way,
We
the
already have a
USSR,
copy of this
I have read some
downloaded.
archived documents, behaved very honestly.
Yeah, that's how you get banned, is they match
asked
the
Poland's
audio,
permission to transit
and
its
then
troops
they
through the
take
Polish
it down,
territory
and you
to
get
help
banned.
Czechoslovakia.
So, for us being as loud as the
But
interview,
the
it's
then
breaking
Polish
it
foreign
up
minister
for fair
said that
use, which is
if
the legal
Soviet planes
definition
flew
of
over
us
Poland,
doing
they would
this.
be downed over the territory
You
of
copyright
Poland.
live video, yes, you can.
But that doesn't matter.
Yep.
What matters is that the war began.
See, and
Poland
So
fell prey to the
acting
policies
first.
see, just so you guys
against
see,
Czechoslovakia.
heads up,
is
we've
under the
detected a
well-known
video in your stream belonging to
Molotov-Ribbentrop
someone
Pact.
else.
Part
So
of the
YouTube
territory,
already
including Western
sees this.
Ukraine,
So
was to be given to Russia. Thus, Russia, which was then named the USSR,
See, guys, so yeah, it's
regained
happening
its
real
historical
time.
lands.
and this is where it pops up, content
After the
ID.
victory in the Great Patriotic War, as we call World War II, all those territories were ultimately enshrined as belonging to Russia, to the USSR.
You said that there's no questions available,
Poland,
right?
it received
Anywhere, right?
apparently in compensation
What was that,
the
Pavel?
lands which had originally been German.
No question actually gets no money, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
Eastern
so
parts of Germany,
if we have to go
these are now western lands of Poland. Of course, Poland regained access to the Baltic Sea and Danzig,
Please talk
which was
about the
once again
acts of
given
Poland.
its Polish
And
name.
are we familiar with all of these?
So this was how this situation developed.
Can you know that
In 1922, when the USSR was being established, the Bolsheviks started building the USSR and established the Soviet Ukraine, which had never existed before. Stalin insisted that those republics be included in the USSR as autonomous entities. For some inexplicable reason, Lenin, the founder of the Soviet state, insisted that they be entitled to withdraw from the USSR. And again, for some unknown reasons, he transferred to that newly established Soviet Republic of Ukraine some of the lands together with people living there, even though those lands had never been called Ukraine.
Yeah, so
And
he's
yet
talking
they were
about
made part
this.
of
This
that
is actually
Soviet
true.
Republic of
He
Ukraine. Those
a
lands
lot of
included the Black Sea
a lot of the
region,
Rush
which
culture and
was
whatnot
received
originated
under
in
Catherine
Ukraine.
the Great, and which had no historical
I don't know if y'all know that, but
connection with Ukraine whatsoever. Even
pay
if we
attention
go
to this
as far
part.
back as 1654, when these lands returned to Russian Empire, that territory was the size of 3 to 4 regions of modern Ukraine, with no Black Sea region. That was completely out of the question.
In 1654.
Exactly.
You obviously have encyclopedic knowledge of this region, but why didn't you make this case for the first 22 years as president that Ukraine wasn't a real country?
Да. Итак, значит, советская Украина получила
The Soviet Union was given a great deal of territory that had never belonged to it, including the Black Sea region. At some point, when Russia received them as an outcome of the Russo-Turkish Wars, they were called New Russia or Novorossiya. But that does not matter. What matters is that Lenin, the founder of the Soviet state, established Ukraine that way. For decades, the Ukrainian Soviet Republic developed as part of the USSR. And for unknown reasons again, the Bolsheviks were engaged
content ID.
Ukrainianization.
Yeah, YouTube content ID.
It was not merely
which
because
makes no
the
sense
Soviet
because no one
leadership
else
was composed to a
no
great
one
extent
else.
of
So what I
those
think is something
originating
is someone
from
else is
Ukraine.
streaming this
Rather,
who
it was explained
has
by
an
the
old
general
channel to
policy
mine
of
and are doing an unlawful
pursued by
takedown,
the
or the
Soviet
government
Union.
did the takedown.
Same things were done in other
Yeah,
Soviet
well,
republics.
this is probably,
involved
it's probably
promoting
because they
national
have an older
languages and
channel.
national
They probably
cultures,
have standing
which
and
is
whatnot.
not a bad
Yeah.
principle.
Did we lose,
That is
did
how
we
the
lose
Soviet
everything? Did we
Ukraine
lose
was
TikTok
created.
and all that?
After the World War II, Ukraine received,
Daily
in
Mail
addition to the
and
lands
Yahoo
that
News are
had
the only
belonged to
two.
Poland before the war, part of the lands that had previously belonged to Hungary and Romania. So Romania and Hungary had some of their lands
this is
taken away
disappointing
and given
for
to the
for those of you
Soviet
that are
Union,
working
but they
at
still
Google.
remain part of
You guys are
Ukraine.
interfering
So in this
with
sense,
free
we have
press.
every reason to affirm that Ukraine
Yeah,
is an
'cause
artificial
the only one who
state
owns this
that
is
was
Tucker
shaped at
Carlson.
Stalin's will.
Do you believe
And
Hungary
he's
is
only
Exactly.
doing
going to
X
take its
in
land
his
back from
website.
Ukraine, and that other nations
Clear
have a right to go
violation
back to their
of our free
1650
press.
borders?
Yeah, shame on you, Google.
I'm not sure whether they should go back to the 1650s.
We lost everything, right? TikTok and all that.
But given Stalin's
still live
time,
on TikTok.
so-called Stalin's regime,
Oh, okay.
which, as many claim, saw numerous violations of human rights and